Hello students, welcome to the lecture series on international business. In this lecture, we will continue with our topic overview of exchange rate system, and this is part 2. I am Professor Soma Sen Gupta, Kamla Nehru College, University of Delhi. In this lecture, we will discuss the evolution of the international financial system, and we will emphasize the two stages of the evolution, that is bimetallism and gold standard. Evolution of the international financial systems. The evolution of IFS can be analyzed over 4 stages: bimetallism, gold standard, Bretton Woods system and flexible exchange rate regime. We will discuss the first two, that is bimetallism and gold standard, in this lecture and cover the rest in the following lectures. Bimetallism, as the name suggests, we are talking about two metals, that is gold and silver. Bimetallism was a prominent international monetary system before the 1870s. A country's currency value was based on fixed legal quantities of both gold and silver. So, how much was the holding of gold and silver of that in that country will determine the currency value of that country. Nations minted unlimited legal tender coins from both metals and established a fixed exchange rate mint ratio between them. The system provided a free and unlimited market for the two metals, that is gold and silver markets. The system imposed no restrictions on the use of coinage of either metal. It also made all other money in circulation redeemable in either gold or silver. Now, working and advantages of bimetallism. The primary theoretical advantage of bimetallism as an international system was price and exchange rate stability. There were a few other advantages also, like fixed exchange rate was there, larger monetary base was also possible through bimetallism. Fixed exchange rates, if we talk about currencies of bimetallic countries and those on a single gold or silver standard could maintain stable exchange rates due to the fixed value of both metals in relation to each other. So, that was the beauty of the two metals, like gold and silver. A fixed ratio was there in exchange rate of gold and silver, and that was maintained. Larger monetary base. The use of two metals provided a larger and more flexible supply of money than a single metal standard, which was thought to stabilize prices and support trade requirements. So, rather than only having one metal, that is gold or silver, they thought of two metals. Stabilizing target zone. This is another advantage, that is stabilizing target zone. Major bimetallic nations, particularly France in the 19th century, acted as a stabilizing force in the global system. By offering to mint whichever metal was cheaper at a legal rate, they effectively created a target zone that stabilized the market price ratio of gold and silver globally. Now, but there were certain challenges, and that led to the decline of bimetallism. So, let us discuss the challenges bimetallism faced and how it declined over the years. Bimetallism faced sufficient challenges that led to decline of this system in the late 19th century, like lack of international cooperation, wasteful and costly, no stability, Gresham's law, shift to the gold standard. So, we will discuss all these problems one by one. So, the first one is lack of international cooperation. For bimetallism to work effectively on a global scale, it required broad international cooperation to maintain a universal fixed ratio, but that was not happening. Attempts to achieve this, such as Latin monetary union, formed in 1865 by France, Belgium, Italy and Switzerland, ultimately failed due to the national interest and geopolitical events like Franco-Prussian War. So, at that time, the acceptance of this system was not there, and for the success of bimetallism, international cooperation was must. Then another challenge was wasteful and costly. Such system was wasteful in that the mining, handling and coinage of two metals was more costly. So, the benefits were less than the cost involved. So, that also led to the decline of bimetallism. No stability is another point. As price stability is dependent on more than the two type of monetary base, bimetallism does not provide greater stability of prices. So, that problem was also there. Freezes the ratio of the prices. That was another challenge. Bimetallism in effect freezes the ratio of the prices of two metals without regard to the changes in the demand and supply condition. So, it was an artificial situation when you are fixing the ratio between gold and silver, because it may change according to the demand and supply conditions. Such changes can disrupt attempts to maintain the double standard. Gresham's law was another challenge. The system was inherently unstable due to difficulty of maintaining equality between the government's fixed mint ratio and the fluctuating market ratio of the two metals. So, there was a clash between the fixed mint ratio of the government and the fluctuating marketing ratio. So, that led to the decline of bimetallism. When one metal became overvalued at the mint compared to the market, people would hoard or export the good undervalued metal. And the reverse is the case, they will use the bad or overvalued metal for everyday transaction, eventually driving the undervalued metal out of circulation and effectively reverting to a monometallic standard. So, that was the case because of which the bimetallism declined. Then another was shift to the gold standard. Following large gold discoveries in California and Australia and Germany's adoption of the gold standard right in 1871, most major economies transitioned to a pure gold standard, and this led to the decline of bimetallism because everybody was moving towards the gold standard. Gold standard became the dominant international system until World War I. Today, bimetallism is primarily of historical and academic interest, as all modern global currencies are flat money systems not tied to any physical commodity. Now, coming to the second stage of international monetary system or foreign exchange systems, that is gold standard. The gold standard was formally accepted as an international monetary system in the 1870s when major countries like United States, Germany and Japan adopted it. Great Britain was the first country because it adopted it way back in 1821. Under this system, world currencies were tied to the value of gold. Now, gold is a noble metal, and since it is scarce, the value of gold is quite high, and it is accepted by all the countries as a valuable metal. So, the world currencies were tied to the value of gold, and the ratio between the currencies of two countries were then determined. So, we will discuss that by taking examples. Now, this made up a substantial portion of the world's money supply. Each country pegged its domestic currency to gold. In simple words, each country's currency was set in value per ounce of gold. Now, let us take an example and then discuss how the currency prices were, the exchange rate was determined. For example, 1 ounce of gold was worth $20.67 in United States, while the value was 4.24 pounds in Great Britain. So, the exchange rate between US dollar and pound sterling was determined by dividing the US dollar price by the Great Britain pound price. Let us see how it happens. See, you can, if we put the dollar price in the numerator and the pound price in the denominator, what we found? $20.67 per ounce of gold divided by pound 4.24 per ounce of gold. This lead to a $4.87 per pound. That is, 1 pound is equivalent to $4.87. So, 1 pound can be exchanged for $4.87. So, this leads to the exchange rate between the pound and dollar on the basis of the price of the gold per ounce of gold in that currency, in that country. I believe you have understood this point. Then each nation was allowed to change its currency into gold on demand, and there were no restrictions on movement of gold from one nation to another. Each country maintained gold stocks to back the value of its currency, because your currency was pegged to the value of the gold. The payments between countries were mainly settled by exchange of gold. If a country imported more than it exported, gold moved out, and vice versa. A country having a balance of payment deficit settled it by losing gold. The gold loss temporarily carried the country over its deficit. But the resulting money supply contraction caused unemployment and deflation also. So, that problem also came. The result was a decline in imports and increase in exports. This ultimately corrected the deficit. Now, in surplus situation, reverse will be the case. So, the gold standard facilitated automatic correction in balance of payment disequilibrium of a country. For example, if Germany had a trade deficit, then gold flowed out of Germany for settlement of trade, leading to contraction of Germany's money supply. This brought down the prices in Germany, making its goods cheaper and competitive. This in turn led to increase in the demand for Germany's exports, thus wiping out the deficit. The gold standard was suspended after a certain period of time. The gold standard was abandoned in 1914 with the onset of World War I. During the war, the country started printing money to provide for the war activities. Now, the significance of then gold standard will not remain, because you are not pegging your currency to the gold reserve of your country. The countries restricted the disengagement movement of gold among nations and also put the convertibility of currency into gold on hold. The printing of currency resulted in inflation. The war also led to loss of workforce and productive capacity, which pushed up the price levels further. After the termination of First World War, the country started returning back to the gold standard. But by now, the things have changed. After World War I, the dollar became stronger and European countries became weak. As a result, US became the first nation to adopt the gold standard back in 1919, and Great Britain adopted it in 1925, France and Switzerland in 1928. The US made continuous efforts to fully revive the gold standard, but all the efforts to reinstate the gold standard came to a halt with the starting of the Great Depression in 1929. So, there was substantial outflow of gold from Great Britain due to recurring balance of payment deficit which happened during the Great Depression. Britain's gold stocks were depleting at a very fast pace, and it became impossible for them to retain gold standard. So, in September 1931, the government of Britain brought an end to the convertibility and let the pound float. Many countries, Japan, Austria, Sweden followed suit by the end of 1931. So, slowly gold standard was losing its value in the exchange rate market. Investors started preferring gold to foreign currency dominated securities. This affected the US gold reserves adversely and led the US government to disregard the gold standard in April 1933. So, let us now pinpoint the reasons for decline of gold standard. The first was inelastic internal price system. The gold standard aimed at exchange stability at the expense of internal price stability. Now, during interwar period, the monetary authorities sought to maintain both exchange stability and price stability. So, this was impossible as exchange stability is generally accompanied by internal price fluctuations. Second reason was violation of rules of gold standard. Now, gold standard required the observance of of a number of conditions like free movement of gold between the countries, automatic expansion of contraction or contraction of currency and credit with the inflow and outflow of gold. Gold standard required also the government in different countries should help facilitate the gold movements by keeping the internal price system flexible in their respective economies. So, after World War I, the governments of gold standard countries did not want their people to experience this kind of inflationary or deflationary tendencies, which is generally the outcome of gold standard. Now, another reason was unbalanced distribution of gold. Now, for the success of gold standard, adequate gold stocks and their proper distribution among the member countries was essential to provide for major payment imbalances. But during the interwar period, countries like USA and France accumulated too much of gold, while the countries of Eastern Europe and Germany, they had a very low stock of gold. The shortage of gold reserves led to the abandonment of gold standard. Another reason was restrictions on free trade. Implementation of gold standard required free and uninterrupted trade of goods between the countries. During the interwar period, most of the gold standard countries abandoned the free trade policy, and a spirit of narrow nationalism developed, and they adopted restrictive policies regarding imports. This resulted in reduction in international trade and the ultimate breakdown of the gold standard. Another reason was external indebtedness. For the success of gold standard, gold is required to be used for trade purposes and not for movement of capital. But during the interwar period, excessive international indebtedness led to decline of gold standard. The reasons for the excessive movement of capital between countries were, after the World War I, the victor nations forced Germany to pay for war repatriation in gold. So, this further led to indebtedness of Germany. There was movement of large amount of short term capital or refugee capital from one country to another in search of security. There was plenty of borrowing that happened. Excessive use of gold is another reason for decline of gold standard. The excessive use of gold exchange standard was responsible for decline. Small countries which were on gold exchange standard used to keep their reserves in London and New York, but rumors of war forced them to withdraw their gold reserves, and this led to the breakdown and subsequent abandonment of gold standard. Rise of economic nationalism, which we have discussed in another point also, that was also reason for decline of gold standard. A wave of nationalism swept the Europe after the World War I. The objective of economic nationalism was to secure self-sufficiency. Countries started following protectionism and imposed restrictions on international trade. This adversely affected the working of gold standard. Another reason was lack of cooperation. Now, after World War I, there was complete absence of economic cooperation among the gold standard countries. This led to decline of the gold standard. Great Depression is another great reason for the decline of gold standard. Because this affected the international trade, the worldwide depression was responsible for flight of capital and the decline of the gold standard. The Great Depression of 1929 to 33 affected worldwide countries and hence the gold standard also. Rise in unemployment, falling demand and prices forced the countries to impose high tariffs to restrict imports. Political instability is another reason for decline of gold standard. The European countries witnessed political instability after the World War I. War, revolution, political agitation, rumors generated a fear of transfer of funds to other countries and thus failed the gold standard. Absence of international bodies like International Monetary Center was there during that time, and that is another reason. Before 1914, movement of gold was not needed as London was the International Monetary Center. The countries having deposit accounts in London banks adjusted the BOP through it. But after the war or during the interwar period, London lost that position and every country was required to keep large stock of gold, and large movement of gold took place. And because of the absence of this International Monetary Center, and movement of gold also required was a costly affair, everything became unmanageable, and this led to the decline of gold standard. Now, let us summarize what we have studied in this lecture. Evolution of international financial system passed through 4 stages, that is bimetallism, gold standard, Bretton Woods system and flexible exchange rate regime. We have discussed bimetallism and gold standard in this lecture. In bimetallism system, a country's currency value was based on fixed large quantities of both gold and silver. The primary advantage of bimetallism as an international system was price and exchange rate stability, larger monetary base, etc. Bimetallism faced significant challenges like lack of international cooperation, shift to gold standard. All this led to its decline in the late 19th century. The gold standard was formally accepted as an international monetary system in the 1870s when major countries like US, Germany and Japan adopted it. Under this system, world currencies were tied to the value of gold. Each country pegged its domestic currency to gold. The reasons for decline of gold standard were inelastic internal price system, violation of rules, unbalanced distribution of gold, restriction on free trade, external indebtedness, rise of economic nationalism, lack of cooperation, Great Depression and political instability. For your references, you can go through certain books. One good book is by C.B. Gupta, S. Chand publication, then another one is Sumati Verma, International Business, Pearson publication, website ePathshala, Chaturvedi and others, MKM publishers, Hill and Hult, that is McGraw-Hill publication. I believe you have understood the topic well. Have a good read and have a nice day. Thank you, students.